Welcome back to the CQQC podcast. My name is Gabe, and I'm joined by my co-hosts Bryan and Nate as always, and we're back for another episode of the podcast. In this week's episode, we're going to be doing a recap of weeks 3 and 4 of MLQ action. Before we do that, we want to give a quick update about MLQ in Canada. Obviously, we're not playing right now, but we do have practices going. So, boys, how are the Raiders and Black Raiders practices going?
So Raiders is good. We've had one official practice. One is supposed to be tomorrow, as of this recording, and then we have another one basically almost every weekend going forward. I have forgotten what the terribleness of summer Quidditch does to my body because I am very much ill-equipped. We also do like these giant hill runs, which were not kind to me in any way. And everyone who knows, I was suffering. That was a rough time. But it was good to get out there and start like throwing around a ball. We can do like much contact stuff. Well, we can do any contact stuff actually. We're all masked up. We're all following the rules, and like it's crazy to go back and like, hey, we're playing Quidditch. Well, we're playing like scrimmages kind of style 3-on-2s, ultimate quaffle stuff where we're not really making contact or anything, but it's good to get out there. Like do you feel the skills coming back? The ball handling is coming back. The hand-eye shots are still terrible, but it's nice. It's nice to get back out there. The heat, but
yeah, we had 4 or 5 weekend practices already on Saturdays. And then this past Tuesday, so yesterday, as of this recording, we had our first weekday practice. Turnout's not too bad. We get about a dozen players, which is enough to do like a full scrimmage if we have to. Yeah, like as you mentioned, like the first week back playing was a wake up call to my body to see like what's going on. Like we had to do a full lap around the park where we play or practice, and halfway through my body's like, it was like, what are you doing? So then I could easily see that my cardio was gone. I had to like build that back up. So over the weeks, I've been working on that. We've basically just been doing drills, things like drills like outlet, offense, defense, sets like that. And then we kind of do some makeshift form of ultimate Quidditch. So like, of course, we can't do any full contact. So we kind of just do like where the person making the pass can't move, so they have to make a pass to the open man who's running around. So it kind of helps build in like your passing skills, getting back into the game and all that stuff. Yeah, we also have to wear masks, which isn't too fun because over time, like especially when it's hot out, it's harder to breathe, but kind of have to deal with it until we're able to get past that. But
get vaccinated. Get vaccinated. That's the ultimate incentive, I think, for Quidditch players beyond the obvious ones. But just like I want to run around outside and not have to wear a mask and suffocate. But until we are all vaccinated, not happening.
Yeah, like since we're not playing, we are able to like build up our skills back for the QC season this fall. So we still have some benefit from it, even though we're not playing.
For sure. Speaking of heat, though, let's get into week 3 and week 4 of MLQ action because I know it's still, we're not fully through the season yet, but it has been quite the season so far from Quidditch. So I think we were talking about it in the beginning of the podcast, but just like our predictions are just completely out the window at this point. But so we'll quickly go through the scores here, and then we'll hop into headlines of some of the more notable events of the series. So in week 3, we had the debut for the Austin Outlaws in the South Super Series, and they pretty much cleaned up shop, like handily beating both League City and the New Orleans Curse. Quickly rip through the scores here.
I think this whole week City was 3-0, wasn't it? Like
it was. All the series were. All of the series were sweeps. Every game. Austin was against League City, 245, 70, 215, 30, 185, 30. So pretty much cleaning up there. Then League City with the sweep against the Curse, 155, 50, 140, 135. Pretty close to the second game there, actually. And then 160, 110 for a 3-0 sweep against them. And then, again, Austin cleaning up shop against the Curse, 205, 60, 220, 30, and 245, 40 for a 3-0 sweep. And then the one interesting game we saw in the North, arguably I would say the series of the weekend. We saw, I don't know, we'll get to it, but I don't think it's necessarily an upset. But we had 115-70, 115-80, and 155-30 for Minneapolis over Indy. So interesting game there. And then we had the debut for the new Boston Forge. Their awesome uniforms. They were rocking. They were debuting against the Rochester Whiteout. The series scores were 115-40, 175-60, 160-75 for a pretty convincing series sweep for Boston in week 3. And then week 4, another really entertaining weekend of MLQ Quidditch. We had the East Super Series where we saw another huge game, upset, if you will, for Washington against Boston. Game 1 was 125-80 for Boston. Then it was 115 for Washington. Very close second game. And then 115-60 for Washington, taking the 2-1 series for Boston. And then Washington, Charlotte, we had 130-145. I want to go into Charlotte, and then 145-40, 130-105 rebound for Washington. They took that series 2-1. And lastly, in the East, we had 190-60, 140-95, 125-50 for Boston over Charlotte. And then moving into the North, we had a 3-0 sweep of Cleveland by Detroit. It was 155-50, 145-120, and 140-135 in that series. And then another not strange, but it was a little bit surprising, I guess. San Antonio and League City in the South was 205-90, 110-160, League City taking that second game, and then 185-60 for San Antonio. We will get to League City in headlines here, but boys, quite the lot 2 weeks of Quidditch we've seen. I guess we'll start with arguably the biggest storyline, I would say, of our season so far, and that being Forge with the or I guess we should say but Admirals, not even Forge. Admirals taking the 2-1 series win over Boston Forge. And boys, I have to ask the question, but is the Forge dynasty over?
No, it's not. I can see contention, I think, with the New York Boston series. That's going to happen. Stuff's going to be interesting, and that will maybe dictate more of what's going on with Boston. Is New York taking the throne? Is Boston still having it and just had a little blip? That's going to happen. But based off this weekend, they had a rough series. I don't believe off the top of my head they had Leanne Dillman. They did not have Aaron McCready. I think they might have been short another couple players as well. But that's huge loss, especially if you go into a series with, like, I believe primarily that's 1 out of their 3 female beaters. They have 2 other like females that are utility, and I think they filled in as well there. But that's a tough ask for a small group on a super series. Like when we went down south in our super series for Raiders, it was a big ask for a small group of players. And by the end of the weekend, we were just, all of us in general were rose. So like, I can't imagine like players being basically like quadruple shifted across games. Like that's really, really tough. So I don't remember the exact roster of who was there. I believe we were practicing at the time and just remember seeing that, like, hey, Washington just finished the series and took out Boston. It was crazy. It was honestly crazy. Does that dictate all of Boston's success for the rest of the season? No, I don't think so. Sorry to put a damper, but unless one of you guys have a hot take, I I really don't believe it.
No, I agree. Like, I think you would have to wait until Boston's like fully loaded in order to like to assess how they compare to the rest of the division and the rest of the league. I also think as well, like Washington is also a better team than last season, so you got to give them their respect as well. That they gave it to Boston just as much as any other team could in the league, like Austin would.
Well, I think a good talking point of that Washington Boston series that it does get discussed, and I think it does kind of put that emphasis there. The top, like maybe not top, but the one of the main cores of this Washington team, they have some great young college talent. Awesome. However, the stars that kind of came over, they're like new transfers, and the transfers from the previous year all came from the Boston program between Trudeau, Julia Bear, Justin Cole, Brian Mulcahy. Like that right there, it's like, hey, here's a bunch of players. I know they have some college players who are chasers and are beating, which is kind of weird. And it's tough to see what will happen when they match up against other teams that are a little bit more prepared for them. But, like, hey, that's a testament to what Boston's done in the past. And they've lost all these players and have to go up against them now. They're still putting on competitive Quidditch. And these games weren't blowouts by any means. They were close.
Yeah, I think the only game that I was like not worried about, but like, and for the record, I also don't think the Boston dynasty or fourth dynasty is over. I will say though that I think that in a way this loss is actually good for Boston. I mean, I think back if we're gonna stay in Boston here, think back to the New England Patriots when they went on their undefeated run all the way to the Super Bowl, and then they lost to the Giants. I think when you do have a dynasty like the Forge have kind of had in the MLQ for the last basically since it started, I think having a loss is actually going to be good for them in the long run. And then to the point of sort of Washington, I think it was definitely impressive, and like don't take anything away from what they did. It was phenomenal, but I just think that even in the series when they played against Charlotte, they lost one game against Charlotte. They have a loss in them as well. So if I was a betting man, I don't think I would necessarily bet on Washington because at the end of the day, that's the championship is what matters, right? So I think would I bet on Washington winning it all? Probably not. But again, taking nothing away from their series against Boston because it definitely was something to see. But again, like you guys have kind of alluded to, it's yeah, I wouldn't sleep on Boston. And like you said, Ryan, I do think they were missing Dillman and actually McCready as well.
Do you guys happen to know where was that series being held? Was it in Boston or was it in Washington or what was going on?
I want to say it was in Washington. But, just take a quick look here.
I think it's Washington. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe home field played advantage into it. However, I will point out championships is also going to be very, very close to Washington again. So maybe that is a sign that like, hey, we have that home field advantage, and like it doesn't necessarily show up on the score sheet in any way, but it shows up maybe on rosters and it shows up on who's coming in rested. I know having a like hour and a half drive is a lot nicer than a 10-hour drive, so we'll have to see.
Yeah. To add on to your point about sorry, what was I gonna say there? Oh yeah, Boston experiencing this loss. Like in sports, winning cures everything. So like whenever you're winning, it kind of masks all your weaknesses as a team. So the fact that they're able to lose, they can assess where they may have their shortcomings in that match, and then of course going into the rest of the season and going into championships, they can make sure that they have all their weaknesses covered and they're ready to go. So like you said, the loss is good that they experienced.
Yeah, and I think I think we all agree their biggest challenge like this season going before championships because we don't know what will happen there exactly. Uh, going like through the regular season, their biggest challenge is going to be New York, and like the first series they faced was Rochester, and it was against a bunch of teams that had already kind of played. Like Rochester had two series in. Then they played Washington and Charlotte, who both like had 2 series, I think, each in. So like teams are coming in with experience, right? Like Boston kind of beat up on the weak link right now in that division. So maybe that first series was a little rust. Maybe it wasn't the best judge of what they had, and they didn't really. I'm not saying they weren't prepared. I would never say that about a team like Boston or Austin or any of the top tier teams in MLQ. But I don't think like you got to gear up, right? Like sure, okay, we beat this team, we should have no problem with them, great. And then you have a nice big step up to that next tier of like difficulty, and it's a little bit of like not shock, but it's just like, hey, this is not the same as before. Like you can't measure them on a linear scale. It just doesn't work like that. But yeah, we'll see. I think we'll see what happens with Boston. I think there's going to be a lot of practice going on right now with a lot of frustrated players who are looking to show their stuff in their final series in week 6.
Yeah, for sure. That last game of week 6, the deciding factor for the East champ. It's that. I mean, yeah, I don't doubt that they'll come out like unfavoring. Sticking with the East, though, we have another talking point for the East was a disappointing season for Rochester. I know I had higher hopes for them. I know that you guys were not quite as high on Rochester as I was, but I don't know. Any quick thoughts on Rochester and what you think maybe went wrong for them this season, or yeah.
My thoughts on Rochester, really, I don't have a ton of exposure. I read what I can, I look up who I can, I watch film where I can. And frankly, I think the what I've seen out of Rochester, I've looked through the lens of Charlotte. And this is kind of a weird comparison, but Charlotte's a new team coming in the East. Cool. They have to make their waves. They've had a couple transfers from previous teams. They have a bunch of new talent from existing like Quidditch communities. Awesome. The thing I've noticed, skill wise, Charlotte and Rochester were fairly close, I would say. But Charlotte's won, I think, all their games where they've won at the beginning of that series, and then as the series went on, the gap got farther and farther and farther apart. They beat Rochester, cool. They put up a good fight against New York, cool. Games 2, Rochester got a little closer, New York got a little farther. Game 3, big gap for New York, Rochester takes it. And I think looking at Charlotte, they're a team that's having problems adjusting or being able to adjust to teams adjusting to them. Rochester's been around long enough that they understand how to do that, except everyone's prepared for the same stuff that they've had. They've had the same players. They've had a couple players like Emily Hickma, who's transferred over. They have like some good young college talent, awesome. But I think their main identity is the same group that's been around for a long time, and teams are adapted to it, and teams know how to deal with it. Charlotte's new. They're cool. They're surprising teams. They beat Washington, who beat Boston, but that was for one game. After that, that gap jumped. So Rochester's. I don't mean this in a mean way, but like they're the old toy that you know what to expect, and they'll do their thing. They're great. They're reliable. But I think the new toys like Charlotte or the new college players that are really like showing their stuff on teams are making big presence, having a big presence, and maybe they're not used to like an MLQ style thing where like teams see you and know how to adjust really fast, but they're learning. Rochester, I don't know how many new tricks they can pull out at this point, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know enough about them, and I haven't played them personally to make that evaluation like 100% concrete, but that's just kind of what I'm seeing in my observations. Sorry to babble, but I don't know. It's weird, like just looking at like their season, because before they were they're a great team. Last in 2019, they did solid, but 2 years can hit you like that, unfortunately.
I would say that just watching them for me, like having played against Rochester, I don't know. Like, again, I guess it's different to see it on screen and actually be playing in a game. But I don't know. They just seem to lack the intimidation factor. Like I remember like from the experience of playing Rochester, I would say that they were probably one of the more physical teams that we came up against, and I don't know. They just I don't know. They just don't seem to have that same physicality that I experienced playing against them. I don't know if that really makes a difference in a series, but I mean, considering that they were in was it the East no it was it back I guess back in week 1 or 2 they had a super series they were in the series.
The week
With,
one Super
week one
Series.
with New York and
Yeah,
Charlotte.
so I mean, I guess not being as physical and um,
Do you think a team's identity being physical has had to change? Because like I remember watching Rochester a little bit like years back when like before like any of that would be relevant. It's not relevant now. But I'm thinking back and like, okay, you have a team identity that's really good, really physical, can really wear you down. Awesome. However, with the addition of two-arm tackling that was done 2 years ago, it's a new shiny toy 2 years ago. So you can really impose your physicalness there. However, teams now have had a whole COVID break to adjust to that and think of strategies how to deal with that and use it effectively. So now your cool best like trait that you had has lost some of its shine because everyone has this new buff to help them, right? So maybe that's part of it. Like, not to bash them or any players being worse or better or whatever, but two-arm tackling is a huge change to the game that I really think needs to get implemented everywhere. But like once players adapt, if you're a team that prides itself and is really good at being one-arm tacklers, you better be spectacular two-arm tacklers to have that same effect.
Yeah, like the two-arm tackling definitely like levels the playing field for teams that weren't as physical in the past. So now having that to their advantage, it kind of like you mentioned, like it doesn't make Rochester's like known identity being like big, strong, and physical that much effective because now teams are able to actually like come back with the same sort of physicality just because the two-arm tackling does give advantages to smaller players.
And hey, right? Like there's Asim Ashkar, there's Aaron Goddessy from Austin, there's Bryan Mulcahy, formerly Boston, now Washington, Teddy Costa, Boston. There's players all around this league. Casey Irwin, who's just she alone just as a force, right? Like you can look at a bunch of players across this league and be like, they're still amazing, yeah, but they're amazing players who are like Team USA level or like all MLQ tier defenders. Those don't grow on trees. Like unless you have like absolute like spectacular talent coming through, you have to step up to that next level. And maybe Rochester wasn't as prepared to take that step, and everyone else's like advantage of getting familiar with two-arm tackling kind of got the step on them. So I don't know. It's tough to see what Rochester does. What, they have a series left or a couple series left?
May have one left, I think.
Yeah, we'll see how they rebound, but yeah, overall just kind of disappointing, but we'll see how they rebound for the rest of the season in the East. And shifting gears, then we'll move into again another really surprising, I guess. Maybe not as surprising as some may think, but in the North, we had the game with Minneapolis and Indianapolis, and Minnie taking a sweep in that series. So I have to ask the question: is there a power shift in the North?
Yes. Yes. And you know what? I play in the North, and I'm not like all knowing. I don't know the new Minnesota additions as well. I'm not gonna try and deep dive there because I haven't had the time, frankly, to try and understand everything that's going on there. They're really doing great. I'll say that much. Like team wise, they look good. I don't know all the players who look amazing, but the talk is good. The results are good. Awesome. I think what I saw that was a bit of a difference was that Indy looks worse. And I don't mean the players. I think the team as a total, their depth took a big hit through the COVID pandemic. They have additions that are good coming in, but it's not enough to work in a system that is so focused on being a system. They are such a friggin' factory of just putting player in, training them up, and they produce. Awesome. But you need time to do that. And I think with COVID being prevalent, it's a lot harder to get those same results trying to put them through the factory. So I don't think Indy's bad by any means. I don't think they're done for. I think just Minnesota came in, was like, hey, we're still here. We're gonna come kick your butts. And Indy's like, cool, we're almost ready for that. We think we can fight it, and they just weren't able to. Which I'm also not sure if that was another. I don't know if that was in Minnesota or Indy. Minnesota's always like they're. I don't want. I love Minnesota as like as a state. I want to go there. I want to travel there. God, I do not want to travel to play Quidditch there. That is, it's far. So unless
That series was Indy.
Oh, it was in Indy.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Never mind. Any potential trash talk on saying, "Oh, it's just because who could show up"? Nope. Nope. Minnesota, you showed out. Good for you.
Yeah, no, to be fair, like I agree. I read down my notes that Indy overall, I thought they were not as dominant as they have been in past years. But I also want to point out to you that I think that Minneapolis also was like their depth was very impressive. Like there were times where I think they were trying to double team Max Meyer, and like just he was able to dish, and they had secondary scoring from everywhere. It was incredible. So I mean, kudos to
Yeah.
Mini for from the, I guess you can call them secondary players for stepping up because it was eclectic, honestly. So yes, I agree that I felt that overall Indy's team play was a little bit like down, but I mean, again, it's still arguably one of the top teams in the league. I just felt that overall, that in addition to what Mini was able to do as a team from their secondary scoring was just it was a recipe for success for Mini, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. They also swept on the snitch catches too. So
Yeah.
Oh, did they?
Exactly.
yeah, they won all three snitch catches.
Hey,
So
there you
overall, I
go.
would say, I guess for now, anyways, we definitely have a power shift. So many clinches the series. It's not series, the division with that, which is the other like a really interesting thing as well because I think we talked about it last week, Brian. We were saying, first place gets to pick who they play, or is it second
Yeah,
place?
so first place gets to pick amongst the two seeds of the East or South. So we'll see how that shakes out because with Minnesota, like I think I'm trying to remember who they played. They played Washington, which is a very different Washington team from what it is now, and then they played um, Kansas City in the losers bracket. So I I want to see if like Minnesota's like, hey, let's say Washington. Oh, actually, I don't even know. I don't even know what's gonna happen. I think it's just gonna be fun. I think there's too many scenarios to account for yet, but it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I think as of right now, they could pick either Boston, New York, or I think Washington's out. They don't have a shot at second.
No.
And then the South, or do they?
Now, if Boston loses all three games, they're still one win ahead of Washington, so they're locked in at second at worst for Boston.
Right. Okay. So, yeah, I don't know. It's gonna, regardless of what happens, it's definitely, like I said, Bryan, it's definitely gonna be interesting, especially with the South being as interesting as it is. Speaking of the South, our last sort of headline talking point we had here was League City. I wrote down League City question mark. Um, so League City, I believe we all had them sitting third, I think, in the South.
Yep.
Based on our early season predictions.
Yep.
And I would say arguably one of the most interesting teams of MLQ this year. So they had the upset, I guess you could say. And we talked about it last week. It wasn't really an upset, but yeah, they had the loss to Kansas City, and then they somehow pull off a win, a quite impressive win, when I add, against San Antonio. So they only lost that series 2-1. So I don't know. I don't know what you guys think about League City. I feel like there's more to give with them. So I definitely would not, if I was a team, I would definitely not want to play League City in LQ Championship weekend. But yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are on League City in the South.
I feel like I've been rambling. Go ahead, Nate. Go first.
Like based on my season expectations, I expected a bit more from them overall in the South Division. Like I had them with a winning record of 7-5, but right now they are
1-8.
At a 1-8 as of this recording with week 3 and 4. So they're definitely underperforming to my standards. I haven't watched too many of their games, but Gabe and I played them at MLQ Championships back when the Black Bears made in 2018, and I don't remember his name, but they had like a big keeper, and like a lot of the offense came from him. I'm not sure if he's still playing with the team, but like I said, I haven't watched too many of their games, but I feel that maybe because of COVID reasons, maybe because of turnover on their team, that they're underperforming. And of course, with the whole parity of the whole league this whole season, I just feel like any team, it almost feels like any team can beat any team, even when a team is not supposed to beat them. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like you would assume that a team would go like 3-0 in certain series, but then you have to watch because there's a chance that like they may come out and take one away. And I feel like they did that when they played against in week 4 when they played against the San Antonio in game 2. So yeah, I feel like there's teams that are winning games that really are kind of just having like a good game. They're hot in that game, and then they kind of come away with like a 2-1 series win or 2-1 series loss, even though it should probably be like a 3-0 series sweep. But
I think from what I remember, there was talk of, because as we talked with Nick about, League City's basically a suburb of Houston, in the like niceties of it. They're a great community. They're a great Quidditch community. I know they're very very big about supporting the Quidditch community, which is awesome. But I think League City was very short staffed for the Kansas City series. Kansas City still showed out. Guess what? You only play the team you play that shows up and is on the field. So if that's who showed up, that's who Kansas City got to play, and Kansas City beat. So maybe the record doesn't represent them perfectly, but it's the record that happened. So I don't think it really matters if you say the ifs, ands, like ifs, ands, and buts, candy and nuts, all that jazz. Like it doesn't matter. But it is so weird though that they took a game from San Antonio. I think it was the first game of the series, or was it the what? Where was
it? It was 1-1-1. So they took the second game.
Yeah, the second.
Wow. See, that's really interesting. I guess maybe it was just good adjustments.
But I believe there was also no snitch catch in that one because the score is 160-110.
Oh, really? So. I don't know. That's interesting, because like I would assume like maybe you get an early jump on him, or maybe you get like the late jump on him and make adjustments. But like kind of in the middle, I guess that really was a back and forth series, and like Kansas City got swept by San Antonio, I think. So, or no, I'm messing up my times. I'm messing up my team, sorry. But like I think it's very interesting to see like a team that's just like, okay, we lost against this apparently lower ranked team, and then we just beat one of the best teams in MLQ. I don't know, just kind of who shows up and who plays, right? So,
Yeah, but I feel like this much into the season, like your record base at this point, your record basically dictates what you are on the field, not just on paper. So like if you have a 1-8 record at this point, it's basically like other teams are either that much better or that much closer to you than previous years, or you're just underperforming based on what you're used to on previous years again. So yeah, but then at the same time, a team can steal a game away from another team. So I'm not too surprised if they come in like steal a game in a 3-game series.
Well, and I guess as well, like that's 3 series for League City, right? They only have New Orleans left in week 6, so I guess whoever wins that series goes to championships, because New Orleans is 0-9. If they win 2 out of 3, they're tied 2-10 each. But New Orleans has the tiebreaker, and head to head, I believe that's how it works. Might be wrong, but
wait, sorry. Are we saying League City or
Kansas
City?
If League City plays New Orleans in the last week of the season, they're like New Orleans is 0-9 and League City's 1-8 currently. If New Orleans wins,
I think we mixed that up. I think that was this week was League City's last round of games, I think, right? Because
the record is
Oh, sorry, they did. I have my sheet wrong then. When did they play? Oh, they beat San Antonio. Sorry.
We mixed that up. So the last game of the season will be big for Kansas City. I mean, we'll see what they do in this South Super Series in week 5, but yeah, so yeah, that's a mix up on our part. We should have because that
So
technically League City's clinched, but it's still it is concerning in the sense that I don't know, it just seems so weird, and the fact that they were able to get one out of San Antonio, but like you said, I think part of it was just the fact that they were shorthanded against Kansas City, and I feel like they do have more to give going into MLQ championships. We'll see where they end up. Like I said, we have the South Super Series this week, week 5, and then the big final game. I guess we'll see what happens, but arguably, based on our predictions, it should be a big final game in week 6 with Kansas City and New Orleans.
Let's just say we were all expecting a closer to an 8-4 record than a 4-8 record.
Yeah.
So, should be interesting.
For sure. Cool. So then we'll quickly preview the week 5. What's to come in MLQ, and then we'll wrap up with our Who Wore the Toque segment. So week 5 will be another really big week. It'll be a clash of the Titans in the South Super Series. Just pulling up the years. So we'll be clash of the Titans in the South Super Series. We'll have Austin and San Antonio. I think we both we all had an agreement that it would be a battle for first and second. So we'll see what happens in that. And as well, we'll see how Kansas City fares against the top dogs in the South. And then the North is kind of just wrapping up things. We have Cleveland and Minneapolis, and then we'll see what Rochester can do. We'll see if they're able to bounce back and claw something out of the Washington series, or if they will end up finishing the season in last. Which again, I'm still a little bit surprised about, but hey, that's Quidditch. Quidditch for you. So, boys, we'll wrap it up with our Who Wore the Toque segment. So for those that aren't familiar with it, Who Wore the Toque? It's not sponsored. It's not sponsored, but
hopefully.
I wish it was sponsored. It is coming from our friends over at the SDP Steve Dangle podcast. They have a Who Wore the Crown segment. Being that we're a Canadian Quidditch podcast, we've decided to go with the Toques. So the Toque is being awarded to the MVP, most valuable player of the last 2 weeks of Quidditch. Could also be a team. I'm pretty sure I gave my Toque to Charlotte in the last episode. So boys, any stand-up players or teams for you that you'd like to give your take to for this week?
For me, so comes from week 3. Even though I hate their team's jersey, the Monarchs, I've given them my toque. They swept against Indy, and they basically, like we discussed on this podcast, they're basically now the kings of the North in that division. So props to them for basically showing what they can do this season and just showing that they can be the top seed in their division. And of course, coming out and winning the first series against Indy in their franchise.
I don't have my toque on me. It disappeared somewhere, so I'm a little sad. Thank you. I'm gonna go out east, and I shout out the entire Washington team. They're amazing. To first, they're the second team to take a game from Boston. They are also the third team to take a game, and they're the first team to ever take a series from Boston, which is still so mind blowing. If this series went the other way, 1-2, 2 wins for Boston, I think everyone's still surprised. But 2-1 is just mind blowing, and they deserved it. They played great. I'm going to shout out someone specifically, and I believe I have their. This is the right person, Bernardo Burgess. So I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, but from what I understand, I don't think he's actually a beater. So he played against Boston's top beaters, some of the best beaters in the world, as a beater who's typically a chaser and still killed it. So shout out to you for just going nuts and playing the game of Quidditch, because that's what we do. So good job, Invisible Toque.
I'm gonna stick in the East as well. Right back to Washington. Mine's gonna be more familiar name, and it's gonna go to Tyler Trudeau. I think we talked about it in our last weekly recap. He just looks, as Ethan Stern put it, just healthier. I remember first season in the MLQ. I remember people saying, "Oh, Tyler Trudeau," and I wasn't that impressed by. I mean, he's still a phenomenal player, but I wasn't as impressed as everyone was kind of hyping him up to be. But this season, he's just proving to be an elite talent in the league. I believe he had the game clinching goal. I think it was the second game.
One of them, at least.
Yeah, I remember. It was also a shout out to MLQ's production crew. I don't know who makes those videos, but the recap video where they said Washington upset Boston or whatever. I thought that was so hype. I had goosebumps watching that. But where they slowed down the final goal. It was super hype. So yeah, I guess I'll give a toque to them as well. Anyways, Tyler Trudeau he was just so dominant in that game, the whole series really. Like Ethan Stern, he just looks healthier and just looks dominant. I remember a lot of people were saying first season when I started playing LQ. So big shout out to Trudeau and the Admirals team for quite the upset against the Forge. So cool. Anything final thoughts, boys, to wrap up our week 3 and 4 recap?
More Quidditch. Give me more Quidditch. I want more Quidditch.
The more the better.
That's simple. I think there's a lot of good storylines ahead. The East will continue to surprise. The North, hey, show me some silly stuff. I'm definitely interested. I think they have a lot of good teams that you can easily cheer for. I don't think there's really any dislikable team there. In the South, I'm ready to play some good Quidditch. Just keep the heat away from me. That's all I ask.
Yeah, I think this season has been anything but ordinary so far. So I'm excited to see any more surprises that take place in the weeks ahead.
For sure. Yeah. Awesome. So I think it's a good place to end the podcast. We'll quickly plug our socials. So Nate has us on our Instagram. It's CQQC_podcast. Follow us on there to stay up to date with all of our updates and our uploads onto our YouTube channel. And we'll be back next week with another episode recapping week 5 and week 6 of the MLQ season. See you then.